Everyone here who's going to be here? Good evening, everyone. This is the Board of Trustees regular meeting. It's July 10th, 2018. It's 9:30 p.m. on the dot. This is meeting number 2018-14. Please take the roll.
President Barry?
Here.
Trustee Stalker?
Here.
Trustee Olenichek?
Here.
Trustee Desmond?
Here.
Trustee Phelan is running a little late. Trustee Vorder?
Here.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everyone rise for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on the agenda is public comments, number 3. I have 4 people listed. I don't know if they were signing in or if they have something to say. First looks like Charles Burr. Does Charles Burr want to make comments? Okay. Wendy Cafagna? Yes. Do you want to make public, people can have up to 3 minutes to talk. Yes. If it's something you want to say, we have a podium here, and what we ask is that you come to the microphone, introduce yourself, let us know if you live in Oak Lawn, and then you have 3 minutes. And then I also have Mark as well, if he wants to go up with you, I don't know. Okay. She says he's on his own.
Say something?
Okay.
You can still do it.
If you could sign the bottom, please. Okay, Wendy, could you please introduce yourself and let us know if you live in Oak Lawn?
Hi, my name is Wendy Cafagna, and I live at 93rd at Nordica and
Okay.
Oak Lawn. I just came to speak about the zoning issue that we have on the papers today. Just a little history. In '07, there's a property at 9405 Neva that asked to be rezoned because they wanted to build a 15-unit condo building, and that zoning was denied. And then at that time, Mr. Durant bought a property on 7121 Neva, and after renting it out for a year, after the previous rezoning for 7405 failed, he applied for his rezoning, and he was looking to get it multifamily housing also. And the board and the committee also voted no back in '08. And here we are again in 2018, and he's asking for rezoning also for the same property. The same issues are still at hand. We have some parking issues. I did the math. We're 2 blocks deep. The frontage road, Neva, Nordica, 2 blocks deep, a block and a half long. And there's 201 condos / apartments. That's the Colonial Courts and Lexington Manor condos on 93rd and Neva. And just in condos alone, if you average a 2-car family, that's 402 cars. And we have cars parked on Neva, bumper to bumper, down the entire length of Neva on both sides of the street. They're parking into the side streets, which would be 93rd Place and 94th Street. And we have parking all down 93rd Street. And sometimes we have people at box trucks, and they park those out there also. Another problem is that if you rezone for Mr. Duran, there's 2 other properties waiting in line to rezone their property, and we're drowning over there with the parking. And we're asking you to please say no to the rezoning. The homes offset the buildings and are a complement, and they are appealing more to our neighborhood. The homes are the complements. It's not the village's problem or the neighbor's problem, us taxpayers, if Mr. Durant can't get the money that he spent to try to invest in this property. That's his problem. So why should we pay the price? We live in the area, not Mr. Duran. He's from another town. And I have a saying in my house, and it says, lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. Just because Mr. Duran spurned his opportunity to build sooner, or he made a bad business choice, it's, doesn't fall upon us to have to live with more cars in there. So, he's the one that made the choice, and he's the one that has to make the sacrifices. And I just want to say, I love my neighborhood. I grew up in Oak Lawn. My husband and I met in high school, and we met in Oak Lawn. We attended all the schools, Lieb Simmons, Oak Lawn High School. We got married. We bought our first house here. We raised our children, 3 children here. And we now are 110% committed in our community. And we just want more charm and more character in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
And we're just saying no to the rezoning.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And then next is Mark Cafagna. Hi, Mark. If you could come up, let us know if you live in Oak Lawn. I have a sneaky suspicion you do. And then you have 3 minutes as well.
Do I have to state my name?
Yes, please.
Okay. My name's Mark Cafagna. I live on 9336 Nordica in Oak Lawn.
Thank you.
The issue is the rezoning. The area we're talking about has apartments on the frontage road, and there's some condos off to the north side of the property across the street. There was an existing house that was taken down, and the original intent, from what I was told, was they were going to build several large homes there. And they tried to rezone it. And it didn't go through because it wasn't a good fit for the area. Because outside of those apartments, everything behind there is all homes. And it backs right up to all our homes on Nordica. So whatever they build on that side is right behind us. Like my wife was saying, there's lots of traffic that comes through, and they take a shortcut down through our street, and there's constant traffic coming through there already. More homes means more traffic. And another thing is, this is kind of like opening Pandora's box a little bit, because if this gets rezoned, there are other properties in the area that I know are gonna come right back for this. And it's like the one thing, and then another one, and then another one. And pretty soon that whole area won't be homes anymore, and we'll be looking at the back of all these apartments and townhouses and condos, and it's kind of taken over the area a little bit. Another thing is, when they purchased the property, the apartments and everything were already there. And they were in really bad shape back then. And since then, the owners have put a lot of money into those apartments and have really tried to fix them up. So it's better condition now than it was back then. So if a home was built today, it's more sellable than it was back then. Maybe the price isn't quite as high as it was, but it is more sellable. I just feel that it's not a good fit for the area, and I think that it shouldn't be passed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We have one more commenter on the rezoning, Amy Rupsch. Hi, Amy, and if you could let us know your name and if you live in Oak Lawn, and then you have
Sure.
3 minutes.
I'm Amy Rupsch, and I live at 9342 Nordica, so I am their neighbors, and Nordica's right behind Neva. And I use Neva quite a bit because my garage actually faces 94th Street, so it's more convenient for me to use that. I'm gonna stick to my points. I got 3 minutes, and I don't want to preach. So, I know that the Planning and Development Commission recommended that this should be rezoned. I do want to draw your attention to the fact that it wasn't unanimous. There were 4 people who said yes, rezone, 3 said no, and 1 person abstained because he had a personal connection, I think, with Mr. Duran, and so he didn't feel like it was ethical for him to actually vote on it. So I want that to stick in your mind, that it wasn't this, let's clink our glasses and get this rezoned. Definitely some resistance to the rezoning. Also, just a short story. When my 14-year-old was in kindergarten, it was St. Patrick's Day, and his teacher asked him, "Are you Irish?" And he said with a straight face, "I'm not Irish, I'm Oak Lawnish." And I don't say that I mean, it is darling, of course, even though, he's 14 now. But I say that because I grew up in Oak Lawn. I went away to school. I spent a couple years in Nashville, Tennessee. But when it was time for me to actually purchase my own house with my husband and my kids, I chose to come back here for many reasons. But much of it is that I do feel like the website suggests that Oak Lawn has a hometown feel to it. And I feel like if the model is being changed from single-family homes to multifamily homes, I think you lose a lot of the character of that. I have awesome neighbors. We have an awesome block. I know we're on this northwest end of Oak Lawn, but we've got a really good thing going on Nordica Avenue. And I do feel like Mr. Durant is not Oak Lawnish, so he doesn't have this interest in preserving what we have. He doesn't live with us. He doesn't borrow tools from us or watch our kids or anything like that. So I feel like for those of us who are Oak Lawnish, and many of you have been in Oak Lawn your entire life, that moving away from that single-family model is a bad direction to go. And I do echo about the parking. It's bumper to bumper. It's kind of treacherous going through there. You're kind of playing chicken with people because there's so many cars. I mean, I urge you to drive over there and see how much the parking is a problem. It seems like there's ample parking spaces in these communities, like the apartments and the condos, but it just seems like everybody prefers to park on the street. And then when we had all the snow, it's a snow route. So then they were parking all along 94th Street for a couple of days while we had that big snow. So I urge you to say no to the rezoning and keep Oak Lawn Oak Lawnish for the people that, are living there and have to deal with the fallout of the rezoning. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Richard Buss. Mr. Buss, you have 3 minutes, sir. And Mr. Buss is going to talk about the transfer tax. And if you could state your name and let us know if you live in Oak Lawn, sir, we'd appreciate that.
My name is really Charles.
I'm sorry, Charles, I'm sorry. I
Kind of write kind of bad sometimes, so I just want to make an excuse for that. I'm an Oak Lawn resident, I pay my taxes here, my insurance, water, sewer, garbage. I got a problem with the village of Oak Lawn because one of the residents that was talking before mentioned selling houses and all that. And village here, they have a transfer tax. Besides paying a real estate agent to sell your house 6% or whatever it is, and all these other taxes they stick to you, you can't sell a house unless the village of Oak Lawn gets a certain amount of money to make sure that the water is taken care of, the garbage, sewer, liens, whatever else is. And I could be wrong with that, but it just seems like there's more and more taxes from the village of Oak Lawn. And one of the residents mentioned before me about the resale of property. Well, every time there's something sold, the village of Oak Lawn gets money. And I just don't think that, there's so many taxes now, it's getting ridiculous. And that's basically what I'm all about, and that's all I wanted to say. Sorry?
Thank you, Mr. Buss. Trustee
Can I
Warder?
comment at that?
Sure.
As far as I know, the transfer tax has been around since the mid-'70s. And it's also my understanding that 95% of the southwest suburbs have a similar tax. Am I correct, village manager? You know?
Right, I know. Larry, he's calling. You're looking it up.
Let-
Right.
Larry?
There is the answer.
When did the transfer tax go into effect? Do you know?
Well, it's been here as long as I've been here.
Been here as long as Bob Straight's been trustee.
How much money does that bring into the village of Oak Lawn, and do you think it's fair? You're taxing somebody who lives here for 40 or 50 years, maybe even works for the village of Oak Lawn, and then when they move out and they want to sell their house, they have to pay you. And what do you do for it? What do you do for the transfer tax?
That's rebated, though. That
that tax is rebated to someone that's lived in Oakland that period of time. When they move out, we
Not
rebate.
rebated unless you're related to somebody. And
No,
I
that's-
spoke to my daughter, which is what I'm trying to.
If you could let our finance director speak and answer.
If you look at the ordinance, when someone sells their house and they're a senior, they are rebated the entire amount of the transfer tax. So this tax went into effect, I believe, in the late sixties. But I'd be happy to meet with you. I can go through the ordinance and show you the provisions of the ordinance that allow for a full rebate. But when someone sells their home and they lived in Oak Lawn for 40-plus years, they get the full tax back. And also, if people buy a home in Oak Lawn, they get the tax back.
Is it true, and I'm not really sure of this, that sometimes the village of Oak Lawn passes these ordinances and do not enforce them for 2 or 3 years, so that if somebody complains about them, you can say that it's been on the books for X amount of time. How come you didn't
It's not
complain?
true, sir.
That's not true.
I'm not aware of
That's not
any.
true.
And I'm going to move on to our agenda. I appreciate your comments very much, sir.
If I could, sir.
Okay, briefly, Larry, please.
You picked a good night to be here because you're talking about finances. If your schedule allows you to stay, our auditors will be giving a presentation on our comprehensive audit this year, 2017. And I think you'll be able to learn a little bit about the array of fees and expenditures and the board's commitment to reducing property taxes. So it's true there is a transfer fee. It's true there are other fees and fines and other sources of revenue that we get rebated in the state of Illinois through your income tax and through sales tax. But it's all said and done, property taxes in this community, and I want you to hear this statistic because we were looking at it yesterday. When the downturn in the economy, most recent downturn occurred in circa 2006 to 2008, the burden on residential property in this community, not commercial, but residential, was at approximately 75%, meaning homeowners were paying for the array of services by approximately 75%. We went through that downturn, we lost businesses, we gained new businesses, and the future was bright in Oak Lawn. Today, through the audit, that burden is reduced to 73%. And all indications are it will continue. This board levies, and has consistently, the mayor and this elected board up here next to me, as your elected officials have levied less taxes overall. When you add up those fees, it's designed, again, to affect your property taxes. So if you have a few minutes when we're done, I think you'll enjoy the presentation. It's very informative, and it's done once a year here in this board, very transparent.
Thank you very much, Larry. Whoa, is this microphone loud? No, we have to move on with the meeting, sir. I'm sorry. Please stick around, and we'd love to talk with you about it. Thank you. I hope you stay for the presentation. Item 4 is conflict of interest disclosure. Does anyone have a conflict to disclose with any item on tonight's agenda? Hearing none. I'm going to move on to item 5, a request to approve the tent event for Hawk Ford, be held from July 19th through July 31st. I have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee Oliniechek made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was Trustee Stride. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Before we get on to the nitty-gritty of the meeting, I want to just say hello to Sherry Miller and Fox College, 14 or 17? 14 Fox College students here today, watching government in action. Thank you very much. Item 6 is a presentation by RSM US LLP for the 2017 audit. Hi, can you please introduce yourselves and take it away, gentlemen?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, trustees. My name is John George, a partner with RSM. We're the audit firm that conducts your annual independent audit. We're here to present the results of the 2017 audited financial statements. With me is Jeff Slade. Jeff is the manager with the firm and manager on the account. Jeff is an Oak Lawn resident. We're going to cover a little bit more about our team, talk a little bit about timeline and the audit process itself. We'll recap, Jeff is going to recap a few of the financial statement highlights. We did meet with the Finance Committee in June, on June 19th. I'm sorry, June 19th. And went into the financials in pretty great detail. So we're just going to cover some overviews. We'll definitely hit some of the expenditure highlights and fund balances, but cover some of the other deliverables. But as we're going through, we're here to answer questions too. So in addition to Jeff and myself, we have 4 other members of the team. Katie Berry, who's a senior manager, she's been on the account for a number of years. Katie is actually the signs off as the audit partner on the engagement. Adam Robitis, a senior associate. Taylor Mitchell, an associate, and then Maddie Guillet, associate. So pretty big team, pretty large process here. The timeline itself we start with meetings and planning meetings with management early on in the year. After the end of the fiscal year, we have our planning meeting, and then we have our preliminary field work, which was the week of March 26th. It's 1 week. Preliminary field works where we get into internal controls, updating our understanding of the significant transaction cycles, receipt cycles, payroll, accounts payable. We do also test your expenditures of federal awards. It's a single audit. So whenever you expend over $750,000, we have a compliance testing over those federal awards. So we do that. We did that week as well. Our final field work is where we do our substantive testing. We obtain the financial information from management. We have substantive testing, receipts that we look at, test the transactions, to verify the account balances that are presented as of the end of the year. That takes that's a 5-week period. So we started that April 16th, ended up on May 18th. We had our exit meeting with management on May 15th, right before the end of the field work. And then we had our Finance Committee meeting, as I mentioned, on June 19th. That brings us to today, the board meeting on July 19th. We dated the report June 25th this year, a little bit earlier than we have in the past, but overall, the audit process itself was extremely smooth. We look at journal entries. The number of journal entries that we had this year from an audit side were 3 entries, and last year was 6. If we go back a number of years, that number was close to 65, over in the 60s, back about 10 years ago. So strong finance team making that process, and we appreciate we're here for over 6 weeks with 4 people, 4 to 6 people throughout the course of the field work. So asking a lot of questions, a lot of demands, and very responsive. So we appreciate that. On a single audit, I mentioned we did test 1 major program. That was your IEPA loan. We did not have any compliance findings or issues with our testing on the single audit side. So a clean report there. Jeff's going to cover some highlights in the financial statements, and then I'll come back and cover some of the other.
Just to be clear, not finding a compliance finding means we complied. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
No compliance findings. Yep.
Hello, everyone. Uh, 2006, so
2006.
it's a bit of time now. As John had mentioned, I'll be going over some of the financial highlights. The first thing I'd like to point out is that in the 2017 CAFR, that's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, that's what the village issues. They received the 2016 Certificate of Excellence, and the value of that can't go understated. Because what Oak Lawn provides to its citizens is a lot of detail and transparency in government financial reporting. It's a rigorous process that the village management has to undergo to make sure that it's up to par with the GFOA. And as I said, it's just something that can't go understated because it takes a lot of work, it's a lot of detail, and it provides a lot of information and goes above and beyond what's required of them.
Yeah, that's the GFOA is the Government Finance Officers Association, and in order to receive that Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, it's it's a 190-page document. A lot of that, like Jeff said, is not required for your general accepted auditing standards, but
Could you speak into the microphone?
they're requirements of the GFOA Certificate of Excellence. So it's a lot of additional schedules and information that's provided to the readers.
Thank you.
And then moving on, the next thing I'd like to point out is that this year the village received an unmodified opinion, and that's otherwise known as a clean opinion. There is nothing that needs to be called out to the financial statement readers that needs to be brought to their attention. There's no going concern issues, no material misstatements that need to be brought to your attention. So everything was clean, and otherwise we were able to gain assurance that the financial statement balances were materially correct. As we move on to the actual financial statements themselves, the CAFRs comprise of two sets of financial statements under two different bases of accounting, one being the government-wide financial statements. This follows the full accrual basis, which you'll see with any of your normal for-profit businesses, such as your BP, Walmart, or those other large Fortune 500 organizations. The other is the fund financial statements, which follows the modified accrual, and this is on a more of a short-term basis, how the village performed in, say, the given year. When you look onto the government-wide financial statements, you'll see that this year, the Village of Oak Lawn saw their statement, their ending net position in their governmental activities increase by about $14.9 million. So it was a very positive year, and the key driver to this was their decrease in their net pension liabilities. The two main factors that I'd attribute to this is, one, the investment returns from their pension portfolios, but two, it's the formal funding policy that the board enacted which has allowed the village to reduce and control its pension liabilities. So moving on from the government-wide financials, the fund financials is more how the village operated in that given year. And in 2017, although their general fund balance saw a decrease in fund balance, which is more or less their income for the year, a loss of about $3.8 million. This can be attributed to basically three main things. $1.4 million can be explained by timing differences. Under the modified accrual basis, the village is only able to recognize revenues if the cash is actually received within 60 days after year end. So even though a revenue source may have already been in place and able to be recognized by year end, if that cash isn't actually received, they're not able to record it as revenue in the given year. The $1.4 million is attributed to that decrease because of sale of village property that was in their plans that didn't occur till later after year end. And then also the Christ Hospital Service Agreement, which was another $600,000, in which the agreement was for 2017, but the money wasn't received till long after year end. The other portion of the loss can be attributed to about $1.4 million explained by overages, budget overages in the ambulance services and firefighting departments. And the other piece of the loss can be attributed to about a $1 million budget shortfall from intergovernmental revenues. So those are state revenue sources. So those are basically the village budgeted for income taxes, home rule sales taxes, and those just came in shorter than expected.
Yeah, if I could hop in here. So we talked about the funding policy and the impact that's had, the pension funding policy and the impact that's had on that pension liability. That's the positive side of the balance sheet of reducing that liability. The other component of that is the increased funding requirements that are required from that. So annually, the village adopted this policy, and it will continue to increase the funding of pensions. That's going to put more strain. So we had a $3.8 million operating deficit this year on your fund financial statements within the general fund. That's going to put more strain even in next year when we continue to increase the pension funding. So expenditures are going to go up because of that. Revenues, if we look at the comment about property taxes, there's a schedule on page 175 that has, I think, a 10-year trend of property taxes. If I go with that real quick here. Yeah, it shows from 2008, the total taxes levied were 14.3 million, 14,369,000. 2017, it was 14.3 million. So over the course of that, 9 years, property taxes have been flat. And when we look at operating expenses continuing to go up, the couple areas that Jeff mentioned on the budget side, those kind of stick out. Obviously, going over budget, overtime within the fire and ambulance services are significant components of that overage. It's with the pension funding, it's continued stress on, the board did a good thing with adopting a funding policy to address the pension issue. With that comes the requirement of retaining, cutting costs where you can in order to make up that difference, because you're going to continue to increase the pension funding.
And then one last thing to highlight about the $3.8 million deficit in the given year is that it decreased the ending fund balance to approximately $5.8 million, which is much lower than what the GFOA recommends. They recommend to have approximately 2 months worth of expenditures in the ending fund balance. So as it stands right now, the $5.8 million is roughly half of what the GFOA recommends.
Isn't it true, though, that a lot of the funds, some of the funds that we were shorted in 17 were collected in early 18?
Correct.
So it was a year-end deficit, but we're pretty well back to all.
Yeah, those revenues were collected in fiscal year 18. But, as Jeff mentioned, there's still the expense side of, if your expenses are in line with where they were in 17, you're still going to have an issue even with those revenues coming.
I understand. I wanted to also add something about the funding policy that we adapted. Long ago, it was determined that our funds were underfunded, that both our police and fire funds, pension funds were not properly funded. We adopted a funding plan which has an increase every year. The funding plan goes up as our deficit goes down. Brian, can you mention a little bit about that to let folks out there know in plain language what actually is happening?
Yeah, the board adopted this policy formally in 2016 to put more money into the pension funds. As John and Jeff just said, at the board's direction, we've made tremendous headway in funding the deficit in these pension funds. The problem is that's only the expense side of it, and we still have an overtime problem with respect to that firefighting and ambulatory department that needs to be addressed, because as John and Jeff just said, the standards are that you should have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 months. So our fund balance is about half of what it should be. And it's going to be challenging for the village to get it back to the level it needs to be because of the funding needs of the pension funds. So Bud's right, we've narrowed the gap, but we still have quite a way to go. And I think the plan that the board laid out for management to follow is to get this in shape by, I want to say 2024. So we're about halfway to that point. These pension contributions were increased starting in 2011, so we're in about the 6th or 7th year of that process.
So the net result is, with level property taxes, we've increased the funding of the pension funds, and we intend to continue to do so until we're caught up.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And the other point that you made, Bud, which is the expense side of this, is we're not quite there, and all I guess I'm saying is we still would have a deficit. We had some timing issues that Jeff alluded to. the hospital agreement that the board is all well aware of, the timing on the sale of the Karis property. Those are all things that we had accrued for in 17 that were a timing problem, but there is still an expense side problem in that we have an inherent structural deficit in the village's operating cash flow. And I think that number is about $1 million to $1.5 million. I think you'd agree with that, right, John?
Thank you.
And then, I mean, just one last thing to note about, I mean, for the residents in the crowd today is that the formal funding policy, although it, you know, it sounds like the village is in dire straits as we're speaking back and forth, is that this is a long-term plan put in place that will help, although it may cause some cost constraints now, it'll help the village later down the line so that net pension liability continues to decrease over time rather than to continue to increase at almost an exponential rate.
Yeah, it's making sure that we have a funding plan, a plan to pay the pensions, right?
Yes.
So moving on, so the first thing that I highlighted was the general fund, the deficit that it experienced. However, there are also other highlights that the village experienced. The water and sewer fund, which provides water not only to the residents of Oak Lawn, but to all the various municipalities, such as Tinley Park, Country Club Hills, and, you know, surrounding areas. That fund actually experienced a $2 million gain for the year. There was also the Oak Lawn Regional Emergency Communications Board, which also experienced a $1.1 million gain. And then when you look at actually the total governmental funds as a whole, they had a net change in fund balance, which by total governmental funds as a whole, that's the general fund, the bond and interest, the various TIF funds, and other non-majors, that actually experienced overall a $2.1 million gain for the
Yeah, and just to make sure we're clear that those funds are, the general fund is the operating fund. The other funds are restricted for the purposes of those funds, including the water sewer fund and the other business type funds. So just the proceeds and earnings of those funds need to go back to support the operations of those, for those purposes.
I just kind of want for residents to be clear, like when we talk about the deficit of, you know, especially in the fire department, the village board has worked for years to try to right that ship, and the union really is fighting us on that. And you know, we're using every legal means we have at our disposal to try to keep those costs in check. However, it is an ongoing problem, and it can really bring us to our knees eventually.
Yeah, it's $3 million. If we could have resolved that, I think we would have a very fair budget for the city.
Larry or Chief, how much over was the overtime last year on the fire department from what was budgeted? It was,
We're talking close to $3 million and what I've identified to the board as virtual overtime. It does not add to the public safety of the community.
and what is budgeted this year for overtime?
$2 million.
2 million? Okay.
0.1 million.
But
And are we on track with that, Brian, for this year?
The run rate right now is in excess of
Okay. Chief, did you care to add anything, or you're, okay.
No, I mean, Deputy Chief Hurdle and I have been here since the 12th, so we've been analyzing financials. We've been able to address a pretty wide latitude of issues already. But you were absolutely correct. We're bound by a collective bargaining agreement with the local. So until we can work on the language,
Yeah.
new successor contract, that's going to be the key.
And this certainly affects how we're viewed by rating agencies as well.
Mayor, what your auditors have told you and what your finance director has told you, it's a key phrase. There is a structural deficit. And the number used, I'm going to use conservatively, 1.5 million. We're spending close to $3 million in fire rescue overtime alone. That is not needed, does not contribute to enhanced public safety in this community, but is dictated by an archaic 1992 agreement, which the union refuses to bargain over. And in state law in Illinois, that puts you as management in a hole before you even sit down. If the union's position is status quo, let me repeat, status quo, that means no change. Under Illinois law, so far, we've been unable to change that paradigm and that contractual language. We're hopeful, as you know, your special counsel has submitted a petition, a declaratory ruling from the Illinois State Labor Board. That decision we expect on or about July 20th on that contract, and we're hopeful we get some movement from the state. So far, we've had mixed reviews on decisions at the judicial level and also at the labor board level, but that's where we're at.
Thank you. Larry, has there been any other department in the village with cost overruns like this in the past few years at least?
There's not a overtime budget in any of the other operating departments which are larger. Let me repeat, larger, Public Works, larger operating department and police, where the overtime is significantly less. And it's planned overtime that their department heads, police chief and public works, manage. Unfortunately, Chief Maverick George cannot manage his budget because the General Assembly, let me repeat, men and women that represent you in Springfield have failed to listen to local officials, mayors, and board members here for every single year we brought this issue to their attention. In other states, like Massachusetts, voters took the issue in their hands, and they went to the ballot box and changed the law. Let me repeat, voters took this issue and overwhelmingly overturned the law, and a new law was put in place, putting the power of labor negotiations in the hands of your elected local officials, the mayor, and your trustees here. So that's what the central issue is, no matter what you read about in the newspapers. You're gonna hear all kinds of noise out there. None of it is accurate. But I just told you, mayor and board, and you're fully aware of it, your mayor, your board know about this. They know what the facts are.
Thank you, Larry. Okay.
We have
Guys,
a couple
Thank you.
items left to cover.
Larry went off on a
No,
tangent.
no problem. So within the financial statements, there's also a discussion around future accounting pronouncements. So we want to point out that significant pronouncement, GASB 75, accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits is going to impact the village on the 12/31/18 year. And what that it does is other post-employment benefits, health insurance costs that are paid for retirees, that liability currently is recorded on the government-wide financial statements that Jeff was talking about, that business statement that combines all your funds. The component that's recorded currently is just the difference between the actuarial required contribution that's calculated and what we're actually contributing. When the GASB 75 comes through, you're going to have to record that entire actuarial accrued liability. And that's based on prior calculations that the actuaries have done under a different standard. That's about $30 million. And right now, we've got about 19 recorded under the old method. So you're looking at least a $12 million additional liability that's going to be recorded once that pronouncement comes through for 12/31/18. So that's a significant impact for next year. Some of the other deliverables that we presented, we're required to report to the board. Our statement of auditing standards 114 requires that we issue a report to those charged with governance, and that covers just some general points I'll list out. Our responsibility as it relates to generally accepted auditing standards, the fact that we perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, as well as government auditing. for the testing of the single audit. We're required to perform it in accordance with government auditing standards. If there were changes in accounting policies or practices, those would be listed out in that report as well. There weren't any. There was no adoption of new accounting policies, no significant or unusual transactions. If there were any, we'd be reporting those to you in that letter. Audit adjustments and past adjustments are reflected in there. We did not have any past adjustments, so that would be if we had a recommended change to financials that we agreed with management not to post, not to have that recorded, we would still be required to communicate that to you. We didn't have any past adjustments, and I mentioned before we only had 3 audit adjustments. Significant estimates, there's a number of estimates within your financial statements that what we consider to be the most significant of those estimates is included in that letter. The pension liabilities, claims payable as it relates to self-insurance, land held for resale and the appraised value of those, and then the OPEB obligation actuarial calculations related to that. We did not have any difficulties encountered during the audit or any significant, didn't have any disagreements with management. So again, those are required communications. I want to just point out those highlights from that letter. We also issue a TIF, for your TIFs, we do compliance testing. We did not have any compliance findings, any of the TIF reports that we tested. We did not, also from an internal control standpoint, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So that's, from an internal control standpoint, if we have issues in those controls we talked about, the cash disbursements, accounts payable, payroll, those are significant transaction cycles. We did not have any issues with those structures. If there were, we'd be reporting those as either a material weakness, significant deficiency. So that's a positive. In the past, we did have a couple significant deficiencies. And when you go back a number of years, there were numerous material weaknesses that, again, to the original point, you've got a strong finance team, and they've done a really good job of improving those processes. So those are all the points we wanted to cover.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for John or Jeff? Always a pleasure. Thank you
thank
very
you.
much, and we appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, very much. It's a board meeting, I'm sorry, sir.
Board meeting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, that moves us to item 7, approval of the meeting minutes for the closed meeting minutes 2018-06, dated May 22nd, 2018. May I have a motion on 7, please?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee
Second.
Porter made that motion. Trustee Stalker is our second. Any discussion? Let's call the vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Alanichak?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Straight?
Yes.
8 is approval of, thank you. 8 is approval of the meeting minutes for the regular meeting minutes 2018-12, dated June 12th, 2018. May I have a motion, please, on number 8?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Ward
Second.
made that motion. Trustee Stalker is our second. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Alanichak?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Abstain.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Straight?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0-1.
9 is approval of the meeting minutes for the special meeting minutes 2018-13, dated June 19th, 2018. May I have a motion on 9, please?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Trustee Vorder.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Stalker. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Alanichak?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Straight?
Yes.
Motion passes.
10 is new business by village trustees. Trustee Desmond?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank all the people who came out to watch the Independence Day Parade last Wednesday. It takes a lot of effort, but a special events committee every year to organise this parade and make it as enjoyable as possible for those people who show up to participate in celebrating our independence. This year, we tried to keep the parade moving as quickly as possible by eliminating the long gaps created by too many cars, driving too many politicians who think the parade is just for them and not for the people who come out to celebrate it. I would also like to mention the hard work put in by our police officers during this time, as they have to juggle the responsibility of responding to calls complaining about fireworks while dealing with people upset at being told their illegal fireworks display cannot continue. A video posted on Facebook recently shows the idiotic attitude of one resident who seems to believe that the law did not apply to him.
but thankfully the people of Oak Lawn responded to his Facebook post with complete support for the Oak Lawn Police Department, and that post was taken down. And I hope Officers Shilney and Disselmeyer will be commended for the restraint and professionalism they showed when dealing with this person who filmed, harassed and swore at them while they were just doing their job. And I hope that person will now realise that neither the police or the people of the neighbourhood will put up with this type of antisocial behaviour. So a big thank you to the Special Events Committee and also to Oak Lawn Public Works and Oak Lawn Police and Fire Departments for ensuring that everyone enjoyed their Independence Day celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Desmond, District 2.
I just want to echo what Trustee Desmond has to say, and it's not only the people of the Village of Oak Lawn support the police, but this board unanimously supports the police and the efforts that went on. Those two police officers, in my opinion, they went above and beyond, and the insults and the verbal abuse that they took, no one should have to go through that, and I commend them on keeping their cool, so thank you.
Thank you. District 3.
I have no new business this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. Tim, I want to thank you for that parade. Every year, that parade gets better and better, and certainly the staff that makes it all happen. And while those two police officers certainly do deserve a pat on the back, I wasn't surprised by that. As an ex-Oak Lawn police officer, that's the way we performed for years. And so I commend the Oak Lawn Police Department for having a force that can deal with those type of pressures and get the job done. But Mayor, I would like to relinquish a little bit of my time to the Oak Lawn Arts Commission. Our chairman, Jackie Trudy, and Commissioner Linda Vorder are here to announce the winner of our first annual Oak Lawn Arts
Come on up
Scholarship
to the
Program.
podium.
Please step
Thank
up.
you. So Jackie Trudy is Chair of the Arts Commission in Oak Lawn, and Linda Vorder is the immediate past chair.
Hi, my name is Jackie Trudy. I've lived in Oak Lawn 40 years. I am the current chair of the Arts Commission. Linda is the immediate past chair, and also was responsible for looking at all of the applications for the scholarship which was awarded. I am going to read the letter that is going to go to Michelle Quinn, and if Michelle could please come up here. It is with extreme pleasure that Oak Lawn It is with extreme pleasure that the Oak Lawn Arts Commission wishes to award you a $500 art scholarship for the 2018-19 school year to the college of your choice. This scholarship will be sent to your college and will be used to assist in your tuition fees or other related costs. We deliberated over your submission of the appropriate forms and portfolio and have come to the conclusion that, as a student of Richards High School in Oak Lawn, you have demonstrated your talent and passion for the arts and are more than qualified for this award. We sincerely hope that you will continue your arts education and remain involved with the arts in the greater Oak Lawn community. Good luck to you and best of wishes to your success in the future.
Michelle's application was unusual. We offer a $500 scholarship for visual arts and also for performing arts. Michelle met both qualifications. She's receiving one scholarship, but her application addressed both areas. And I actually saw her perform in was it the group improv over at Richards? Yeah, awesome job over at Richards, and Michelle certainly qualified. She'll be going on to study journalism, broadcast journalism at Augustana College, Rock Island.
So John wants
Anything you want to say, Michelle? Okay, Michelle says thank you, and we're going to take a group photo very quickly.
That's terrific. I'm right here.
Oh, gosh.
Take 3 or 4. Make sure one of them's good before you.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your patience.
thank you.
Make sure one.
Did you get one, Dermot? You're good? Okay. Okay, thank you. Terry, any other new business?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, District 5.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 11 is Village Manager's Report. Larry?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to commend the comments made by our trustees and the mayor regarding our police officers in this community and what they had to endure in terms of verbal abuse and offensive language over the holiday. I appreciate your restraint and your professionalism. I thank you. I also like to commend and salute firefighter paramedic Kevin Grant, who was nominated by our local VFW and received an award in Springfield, a state award for his commitment to excellence in saving lives and delivery of his professionalism for our residents and businesses. Furthermore, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize members of our fire rescue department that engaged in specific use of technology, working with the fine nurses and doctors of Advocate in saving the lives of 2 individuals over the holiday that suffered serious injuries and illnesses. So thank you, men and women of the Oak Lawn Fire Rescue Department. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Larry. Item 12, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are routine or have been brought forward at the direction of the Board of Trustees and will be enacted with one motion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Item 12A is a request to approve the Planning and Development Commission referral for rezoning R1 Single Family to R4 Townhome at 9311 South Neva Avenue. This was a 4-3-1 vote to approve petition number 2018-4. Philip Duran is the petitioner in District 1. And then B is a motion granting that request. An ordinance granting that request. 12C is a request to approve the Planning and Development Commission referral for a 3-lot subdivision at 10421 South Kedvale Avenue. This was a 8-0 vote to approve. Number 2018-3, Desmond Martello is the petitioner in District 6. D like David is an ordinance granting that request. E is a request to approve the Traffic Review Committee. Referral for a 2-way stop sign east and westbound at 94th Street and Sproat Avenue. This was a 6-0 vote to approve. Item TC 1260 SS, Ganya Driscoll is the petitioner in District 2. F is an ordinance granting that request. G is ordinance 181453, an ordinance authorizing the disposal of 2 vehicles seized by the Village of Oak Lawn. H is Resolution 181453, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement pertaining to Oak Lawn emergency dispatch services between the Village of Oak Lawn and the Village of Lyons. I is a Resolution 181454, resolution approving a lease agreement between the Village of Oak Lawn and Oak Lawn Baseball for the use of certain baseball fields within the village. J is a request for the Board of Trustees approval and direction to the Board of the Fire and Police Commissioners to hire 1 police officer from the current eligibility list due to a resignation. May I have a motion on item 12, please?
Motion approved.
Thank you. That was Trustee Stalker who made that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Second is Trustee Warder. Any discussion?
I'd like to remove items A and B for discussion.
A and B, anyone else? Okay, so we are going to vote on everything except item 12A and B. So everything through J except A and B. Any other discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. 12A is a request to approve the Planning and Development Commission referral for rezoning R1 Single Family to R4 Townhome at 9311 South Neva Avenue. This was a 4-3-1 vote to approve petition number 2018-4. Philip Duran is the petitioner in District 1. And B is an ordinance granting that request. May I have a motion, please, on 12A and B?
Motion
Or
approved.
12A, excuse me. We have motion
Motion
to
to approve.
approve by trustee Stalker,
Second.
seconded by trustee Desmond. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want the residents to understand that trustee Desmond has been working on this. Tim, how many years have you been working on this property?
Maybe close to 2 years.
And that this property, actually, there was talk about building apartments, which I believe that the residents were in a meeting with trustee Desmond about that idea. And that concept obviously didn't work. I don't think anybody would want to see apartments in there. I know that ideally, a person who buys the property and would want to make it in residential, if he can't get somebody to buy into that thought of making it residential, I don't know what more we can do. We don't own the property. We have the ability to try to guide the developer as much as we possibly can. And Tim, how many meetings did you have with the residents on this, discussing this with them?
Probably 2 or 3. But the issue here is the zoning. Previously, when developers inquired about this property, they wanted to build apartments. I met with probably 3 different developers over there. These were developers that wanted to buy the 2 houses next to this property. The people that owned those 2 houses want to sell, but the developer would only build apartments. And I told him that the village board would not approve apartments. The issue was that the only zoning available at that time for multifamily was multifamily, which means they could have built anything from a duplex to a multi-story apartment building. So we created a new zoning specification, or 4 townhouses, and this restricts this property to 3 single-family attached townhouses. That would prevent a developer from buying the property, saying he would just build a townhouse and then go ahead and build multifamily apartments. This developer, he wants to build 3 attached townhouses with 2-car garages, which hopefully will address or should take care of the parking. The issue with the parking in Neva is the colonial court apartments that are right across the street. I'm sure, we've spoken several times about the parking over there, Larry. I'm not sure if anything can be done with the parking issues that are there.
I'd only say in the parking, I've had a discussion with Wendy about this, and she's absolutely correct. It is parking bumper to bumper along the west side. And I do believe that requires a further discussion with the residents and with the owners of the colonial apartments, so they call it Reverb now. It's new ownership, and they have done substantial investment. But I did notice after the meeting, Wendy, when we talked, and I took a ride by the next night, that there were a lot of vacant places in the evening, vacant parking spaces within the lot, but the street was full. So I think we ought to have a dialogue about that, and I believe you also indicated all parking was removed for traffic flow along the frontage road that used to allow parking in front. There may be some opportunities there with a change in the curbing, because they have plenty of green space there, attractive, to make some changes there that would enhance the apartments, but also be a better neighbor to you and your other single-family homeowners. So I think it's a valid concern, but I think there's some work that can be done, and then eventually taking that before the Traffic Review Committee, which makes a recommendation like the Planning Commission, and it ultimately comes back to the board.
But again, to get back to the agenda item, like I stated, I've met with 3 different developers, including Mr. Durant. They all wanted to build apartments. And I told them that the board would not approve apartments. That is why we created the townhouse zoning specification, and that is what is on the agenda tonight. I think it's 3 single-family townhouses.
So the issue comes down to, if we don't go forward with this, that property sits vacant and unused, you have a developer that for many years have not been able to move it. I'm sure if he could build a single-family house on there, he would have tried to have done that, but I commend the board for making an R4 for the townhome, because I know that it's a difficult decision when you're looking at, the neighborhoods we grow up in. I went to school at you guys. I live in the same village you live in, and I will tell you that if this same type of development came into my district, I'd be a little bit leery about it, but I would also look at it as improvement in some of the areas that we've not had any type of improvement in there. So I don't have an issue with a townhome development. I am concerned about the parking, and I know that staff will continue to work with you on the parking side, and hopefully they're going to have they're going to have 2-car garages on these.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will alleviate, I mean, even if they have an average of 3 cars, we can't predict what the future's gonna be, and just like in our regular residential areas that have 2-car garages and people don't use them, I understand that, that would always be a concern, but I think looking forward, that any type of development that fits into the neighborhood, and I'm sure, knowing Tim as well as I do in this board, that this is not going to be an ugly structure. I think it'll be very, very good-looking structure, and hopefully will improve what's, in my opinion, undeveloped blemish land in your neighborhood.
If I may, trustees and mayor, the other item for the residents in this district, it's the first time I've ever seen it in the village. They have a requirement that the builder has to go before the Architectural Design and Review Commission. Up to this time in history, that review of the elevations and the use of materials and colors was only required for commercial development. So in this special R4 new zoning district, the builder is required. That's a public meeting. You're allowed to attend that meeting as well. Like the planning commission, those are volunteer citizens. They're architects and engineers who live in this community, your neighbor, and I think that they will take a look at that. You have an opportunity to comment on the landscaping, colors, use of brick, materials, roof line, windows, all the exterior, what you would be viewing as a neighbor. That's an important new change with this zoning.
I have no other comments.
Thanks. Any other discussion? I just would like some assurance that we could look at that parking, Tim, and maybe have the west side of the street be for residents of that block, just on the west side. I don't know how we can restrict.
Well, I think right now there isn't any parking.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to put something like that in, so the people on that west side can enjoy the west side of the street. I don't know how you could do that. I know on my block, there's restrictions.
Residential permit parking only, yes, there is.
Yes, there is. So, I know there's precedent to do it, and I'd encourage support of that if we do approve this, just.
And that's a great example of a development that ended up in the neighborhood, and things are coexisting there, and there has been parking restrictions to eliminate the issue.
Yeah.
That's right off of 51st Street.
I know he's not here, Chief Palmer. I'd already looked into it. I don't know if he'd come up with any recommendation yet.
No, but again, I would say we are open, as the mayor and trustee Olenichik and Desmond have said, to sit down with you, but I would suggest we bring the new owners of Reverb, the apartment buildings across the street. I think they're part of the solution with the parking in the area from what I observed.
Okay. Any other discussion? This is 12A. I'm going to call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker.
Yes.
Trustee Olenichik.
Yes.
Trustee Desmond.
Yes.
Trustee Vorder.
Yes.
Trustee Straight.
Yes.
Passes.
And 12B is an ordinance granting that request. May I have a motion on 12B, please?
Motion approved.
Thank you. Trustee Stalker made that motion, seconded by Trustee Warder. Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker.
Yes.
Trustee Olenichik.
Yes.
Trustee Desmond.
Yes.
Trustee Vorder.
Yes.
Trustee Straight.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone coming out in their comments. 13 is Resolution 181455, a resolution waiving the competitive bidding requirements and authorizing the purchase of storage lockers from Bradford Systems Corporation for the Oaklawn Police Department. May I have a motion on 13, please?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Warder made that motion,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Stalker. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. 14 is Resolution 181456, a resolution waiving the competitive bidding requirements and authorizing the capital lease for one 2018 Ford and Scepter for the Oaklawn Fire Department from Hawk Ford. They have a motion on 14, please.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee Stalker made that motion, seconded by Trustee Vorder. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Passes.
15 is Resolution 181457, a resolution waiving the competitive bidding requirements and authorizing the capital lease for one 2018 Ford F-150 XL pickup for the Oaklawn Department of Public Works from Hawk Ford. May I have a motion on 15?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee Stalker made that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Vorder is our second. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Thank you. 16 is Village Clerk's Report. Jane?
Approval of semi-monthly disbursements, number 2018-12D, dated June 26, 2018, in the amount of $1,710,101.50.
Thank you. May I have a motion on 16A, please?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Vorder made that motion,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Stalker. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
16B?
Approval of semi-monthly disbursements, number 2018-13D, dated July 10th, 2018, in the amount of $5,095,991.28.
Thank you. May I have motion on 16B, please?
A motion to pay the bills, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Vorder,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Stalker. Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Motion passes. That's it, Mayor.
Okay. 17 Village President's Report. 17A is Ordinance 181454, an ordinance increasing the number of Class C liquor licenses that can be issued in the village. This is for Fall on the Green, September 7th through the 9th. May I have a motion, please, on 17A?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Trustee Vorder made the motion.
Second.
Trustee Stalker is our second. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Thank you. 17B is Ordinance 181455, an ordinance amending Title 3, Chapter 3, Section 7 of the Oaklawn Village Code pertaining to liquor license fees. May I have a motion on 17B, please?
Motion to approve,
Thank
Mayor.
you, Trustee Vorder.
Second.
Oh, Trustee Desmond, thank you. As our second, any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Excuse me. Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit?
Yes.
Thank you. C is Historic Preservation Committee appointments. All the current committee members, their terms are not yet expired. These are adding to current. I'd like to appoint Ken Dembski and Marcy Dembski. May I have a motion, please, on 17C?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Thank
Second.
you. I'm going to give that to Trustee Vorder, and Trustee Stalker is our second. Any discussion? Let's take that vote, please.
Trustee Stalker?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Streit? Yes.
Thank you. General Village Matters, I want to echo Trustee Desmond's statements on the parade. I want to thank everyone who came out to watch the parade, all the community people who participate in the parade, and all the people behind the scenes who made it so wonderful. It's a beautiful thing to see the whole village come out together like that. And it pretty hot, but it was very smooth going. And the trustee trolley was a big hit. Great
Could have
idea.
joined us. We could have been greener that day.
Well, that's okay. I wasn't invited. And then, echoing Trustee Desmond's statements and, just the respect for our police officers. Most of the police officers are responding to complaints from neighbors. So I can't tell you the number of people who have reached out to me and said, my dog is going crazy, I'm afraid to leave my house, it sounds like a war zone. Veterans returning home who are hearing this, getting very anxious about it. There's a reason the fireworks are illegal, and if a police officer does come there, they don't deserve the abuse, it's really terrible. These are neighbor-driven complaints, and, the police officers are responding to legitimate calls about illegal activity. I was especially concerned in that video to see the children exposed not only to the dangers of the fireworks, but the parent being so abusive to law enforcement and thinking it was just a whole lot of fun. I was really disturbed by that. I applaud our first responders and the restraint they showed. And, I think you can get a sense that our board is unified in the support of that department. We really do appreciate it, and I know residents very much do as well. That's all I have to say. Item 18 is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Trustee Olenichek made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It was Trustee Stride, I think. Okay, let's call that vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, everyone. We are officially adjourned. It's 8:46 PM. Thank you very much.
Dermot, how are you?